What up, everybody? It's your man, Theo E.J. Wilson, and listen carefully. I'm about to tell you something very, very important. Racism doesn't have one, but three forms, and they all begin with the letter I. The first one is interpersonal racism. You know that is bigotry. That's racial slurs, that's swastika spray painted, that's personal feelings of dislike for another group of people based on prejudice. So when white people be like, black people can be racist, black people can be bigoted. Some of us don't like y'all just because the color of your skin. After 400 years of subjugation, maybe that's an inevitable outcome. Aren't you glad that those black people don't have the second thing, which is power? Because that's bigotry plus power equals institutional racism. Institutional racism doesn't leave a racial slur behind. It only shows up in the back end. So when we finally do the stop and frisk numbers, when we finally figure out who got arrested for what crimes, when we finally figure out where the police have been located in communities, we see that there's been institutional bias, but it's very, very hard to catch on the front end. And then there's a third form, very often not addressed in the greater American dialogue about race, and that's internalized racism. It's when black people hate themselves as much as white supremacists hate black people. And it's an inevitable outcome of all these centuries of bigotry, of being beat up, of being raped, of being freaking taught to hate yourself. And we begin to view ourselves through the lens of our former oppressors and current, if you know where to look. So it's just like a child. If you tell a child you're bad, you're worthless, you never amount to anything, and then you beat that child, pretty soon the kid's gonna internalize the message. I'm bad, I'm worthless, I'll never amount to anything. And that shows up all the time. And there's a spectrum of internalized racism that people aren't talking about. And it looked like from Crippen to Candace Owens. I posted a meme recently that had pictures of Candace Owens, Kanye West, freaking the Highest twins, Ben Carson. And I said, these folks do not speak for me. They are black faces on white supremacy. And folks got mad at me like, oh, just because they don't agree with you, they black faces on white supremacy? That's fucked up. How you create unity with that? I'm just like, I don't know how much time you spent on online white supremacist spaces, but I spend a lot of time there. I got a whole TED talk about it. And I'm going to tell y'all that when white supremacists be like, black people should be more like, those are the names that they mention. And so here's the really bad part about internalized racism, black folks. It enables the other I, institutional racism. Meaning, when I see my brothers and sisters out there gangbanging and shooting, right? Nipsey Hussle broke it down perfectly. He said, when the big homie sends a gangster on a mission to smoke somebody in rival hood, whatever that may be, that boy will drive by the white dude in the business suit. He'll even drive past the white kid in hip hop gear, and he'll look for a direct replica of himself in another neighborhood on another set. These crimes should be labeled black self-hate crimes, right? It is the large-scale equivalent of when somebody who's been abused begins to cut themselves, begins to harm themselves. It's literally widespread black self-harm. That's what you're looking at when you look at the phenomenon of black-on-black crime, right? Horizontal murder. Because for centuries, we have been told that black bodies are worthless. And because we internalize the message, we've internalized the myth of nigger. Niggers don't exist. James Baldwin broke this down perfectly. The idea of a nigger is literally from the bruised, broken subconscious of oppressive white people. And we begin to say, damn, I'm that, because of all of the brutality that's been inflicted against us. And it also enables systemic racism in a way that people don't talk about, which is gentrification. You see, there's this old saying in my community, the white man's ice is colder. So when integration began to happen, high earning blacks in their own communities was like, man, why would I live around these niggas? Why would I actually try to improve my community? Why don't I live in a nice neighborhood, in a peaceful neighborhood? Instead of improving the place where I'm from, instead of buying up the block, creating business opportunities for my own people, I'm just gonna move away from them, right? Because that's internalized self-hatred, right? You see that in colorism, all sorts of stuff goes on. And then another thing is that when you get a voice like Candace Owens out there, there's a white supremacist listening to her right now. There's a police officer who has anti-black leanings right now, listening listening to her, and she's using the authority of her blackness. Every person who's been oppressed in an ironic way gains this moral authority about their own historical narrative, and she seals it. She puts a sign on it that says, this is how things really are. And a white person who doesn't understand that there's some black self-hatred there is going to be like, damn, that's the way it really is. I'm going to listen to Candace Owens. And it's so dangerous because there is a denial complex. There's a fear complex. There's this like literal trauma in white people that says, I don't want to be associated with that. That shit that happened in the past, and it shows up in two different ways. It can either show up in like extreme guilt or just in a sense of accountability. It says, how can I help? How can I get rid of racism? How can I be anti-racist? That is a healthy way to do it. And the other way it shows up is deflection. It shows up as like literally like, nah, what about y'all? What about Chicago? I'm gonna tell you about Chicago. These are black self-hate crimes. I'm not trying to excuse these boys. Notice that all of these boys who commit crimes against their own people will do their full measure of time in the justice system. How about the police who shot Laquan McDonald 16 times? You see what I'm saying? And they covered it up all the way up to Rahm Emanuel. This is what I'm saying. Internalized racism fuels institutionalized racism. And we got to talk about that because it's misleading the shit out of white people when they try to figure out what the truth about black people is. My name's Theo E.J. Wilson. Holla back, like, follow, share this message out. Peace.